Hey there guys, and welcome to another nerdy review. I'm your host Zaku, and today we'll be reviewing Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway. Now before I begin, just some quick things here. If you're watching this on Twitch, follow me on my Twitch account here. If you're watching it on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this movie or what you thought of my opinion about it. And also, if you want to keep up to date with when I'm going live and all that stuff, make sure to follow me on my Twitter account. Again, that's when I post when I'm going live or some random things or what I'm reviewing, just, all sorts of stuff. So make sure to follow me there too. Let's start off with the story here. And I'm taking this straight off from Netflix here with a little bit of my own pizzazz additional to it as well. So, in the Universal Century 0105, after Char's rebellion, Hathaway No leads an insurgence against the Earth Federation, but meeting an enemy officer and a mysterious woman alter his fate. It's an interesting point, and there's actually a lot more to go behind that one. So I just want to give you guys some little fun factors here. This is quite literally the newest Gundam movie. It just came out a couple of days ago, today being July 3rd of 2021. It came out on July 1st, so 2 days ago it came out. And yes, I did review it on July 1st, or watched the movie on July 1st. This movie was originally set to come out last year, around about the same time frame in summer. I believe it was actually supposed to come out in May or June. Of course, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, they had to stagger the release, and then they released it not too long ago. Actually, they pushed it back so far that they just released it last month in June, theatrically in Japan and China. And then internationally and state-wise, Netflix actually secured the exclusive rights to stream the film, and that's why it was released just 2 days ago on the 1st of July. So this is kind of a unique thing, kind of cool too, because as I mentioned, I don't often get to watch Gundam movies or series when they first come out. I usually have to wait a few years or so before I even get to watch the new content. And as that comes out, newer content comes out, so I'm always going to be behind, which is kind of sad, but I'm actually kind of glad I finally got to watch something that came out, quite literally. For those who are not in the know, Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway is actually the first of 3 movies that are going to be adapted from Yoshiyuki Tomino's novel, Hathaway's Flash. In fact, Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway is basically the first novel of the 3. So, not much of a spoilers here. This movie does kind of end off, not really have a cliffhanger, but building off towards the next movie. And we're expecting to get our next 2 in the coming time. It is now currently, from what I can understand, in production. But there is not much information beyond that when I was scouring the net for more info for the sequel, let alone even knowing the name. Now, this movie does clock in at about an hour and 38 minutes, so it is relatively a very short Gundam movie. But they managed to pack in quite a bit into it, too. I'll get in a little bit of the specifics here. Now, with the animation, what you're seeing here is kind of similar to the animation that we would be seeing in the movie itself. Albeit, I would say it's a little bit more contrastier, a lot more harder on the lines. I think the image here of Gigi kind of gives a good idea of the lines, albeit it seems not as solid. It's kind of like spreading out a little bit. I just pulled this poster from online here, but the animation is very top-notch, very movie quality-esque animation. I do want to say, though, that very similar, like more recent Gundam movies or series, like Origin, Narrative, you watched my previous review, and now with Hathaway as well, the animation, again, is very much as 2D-esque looking, but then you get the mobile suits, and the mobile suits are these 3D-esque animation. I'm not a huge fan of the 3D animation, and then when you pair them together, so you get the 2D with the 3D, it's very offsetting. It kind of takes you away from the atmosphere that the movie's trying to establish, because it feels too fake, if that makes sense. It doesn't, the images just don't belong. You got a 2D and you got a 3D object or image right here, and it just doesn't look or mesh that well with it. Not saying that the 3D models of the suits are not good. I think they look gorgeous, but it's just off-putting when you see the 2D characters alongside with the 3D suits. I could be wrong here, but from what I'm seeing here, then this is what I can understand about this current animation. That's what it looks like to me. I do love how this movie does refer back to. So this is again 12 years after Char's counterattack, or Char's rebellion, as they refer to it in the movie. But they do some flashbacks to Char's counterattack. Not only do they do flashbacks to it that are from the movie itself, but they do these flashbacks in newer animation. So it's just not a cut of the 1988 film itself and then just put into the movie. No. They use the animation, the current animation, to redo those scenes and then insert it into the movie. I'll bet these animation scenes are about like 5 seconds or so. It still says something about that. Taking the time to make quality out of a film and not just being lazy on cut, paste. You know, no. They went the mile, and I appreciate that a lot. The next thing I want to talk about is the voice acting. Phenomenal voice acting. I feel like everybody fits their roles appropriately and sounds great. Not one character, like I'm just always cycling around these characters right here, but of course, not one character I felt like did not fit their role, didn't really brought these characters to life on screen or in animation form. I think everyone did a fantastic job. So, yeah, great job on the voice acting. I really did enjoy it right there. Music-wise, it's, for the most part, alright. Again, it makes me think back to Narrative Gundam. Very subtle music for the most part. But here, contextually, in the film, it makes more sense. And I'll get to the whole film atmosphere in just a moment there. But the music kind of gets ramped up a little bit in certain scenes or moments where these scenes are being driven by the music and really elevated by it. Other than that, mostly the music is very subtle. It's in the background for the most part, not really playing a key role in bringing in the enjoyment or making you like feel locked into the atmosphere of the film. Funny that I talk about music though, because the opening credits of this movie reminds me of a lot of like a James Bond film or like a James Bond opening, right? You got this music with like these like weird little montages and stuff like that. Well, in this case, it's like mostly with mobile suits, but it gives this like nice little montages here and there. So it's like very James Bond-esque, and I say that because it's very important. The next thing I really want to talk about this movie is its overall kind of like pacing or how it goes about it. I want to say 99% of this entire movie is story / plot. I cannot stress that enough. I might be exaggerating a little bit. I might be going too much of the extra 4%. So 95%. I'll say 95%, okay, of this movie is very much story and not action at all. It feels very much heavy into this espionage-esque storytelling. It almost reminds me of the movie. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's called The American. It's with George Clooney. Or it reminds me a lot of like Bond movies without the action, really. A lot of this like secrecy, assumptive of spies, very much playing the dialogue tree. You know, like trying to like suss out who's a spy, or like being covert about who you are, basically. So it gets kind of interesting. I wouldn't say it's like Quentin Tarantino levels of dialogue, but it gets there at points. It gets there. I almost feel like maybe the director of this film got a little bit of inspiration of Tarantino conversations alongside with spy movies and kind of married those two together. And that's what Hathaway really, really feels like. So that immediately tells you that a lot of the action, though, is chopped down. Spoilers, not really spoiling much. There's only 2 mecha fighting scenes in the entire movie, and they are very short. The mecha fighting in this entire movie barely equates to not even quite 10 minutes. So that's not a whole lot. I would say that alongside with the next point, another point I'm gonna make regarding Suits when I get to that segment, but this is probably the least amount of fighting I've ever seen in any Gundam movie. I'm gonna compare it to the movie. I can't say series, because if I was gonna do series, closest one I can compare it to would have been like Turn A Gundam, right? But for movie wise, the closest movie I would say that would have the least amount of action in it. Come to think, I can't really. Oh, Endless Waltz. Endless Waltz is probably the closest one, based off of memory here. Had the least amount of action, least amount of suits, and Hathaway does the exact same thing. Not saying that the action is not good though. So, my other point I want to bring up here too, I really liked about this movie was the realism. The realism I really liked in this movie was like a lot of it with the suits too. It feels so much like a real robot. They don't try to do like all the super robot actions or like, you know, what we see in the normal Gundam series, right? These suits move very kind of almost clunky-esque, very tanky, what it feels like. Their motions, the sound effects, the mannerisms of these mobile suits feel very real robot-esque. Their attacks also, like, you know, like with beam riflery was amazing. The beam riflery almost feels like a plasma-esque. So like when it hits certain things or hits certain environmental objects or whatnot, or even the suits themselves, it could cause that plasma splatter. So it kind of defines a little bit more of that realism about what a beam rifle is like. It's not like a pure light, but more like plasma almost. And you can get these like sparks of the beam rifle, and actually how much that can cause damage, not towards what it is being hit, but the surrounding things around that beam rifle shot. And I thought that was crazy cool, like things catching on fire, melting, or even people getting hit. So I thought that was some real good attention to detail, to realism itself. Again, the mobile suits don't move incredibly fast or whatnot, so it gives that sense of like, okay, these are like real hulking machines. They're not like human motion, like incredibly fast. They're legit based in the physical realm of what machinery can move like. So that's something I really appreciated in the movie when it regards like real life physics. Other things, there were some smaller things that I appreciated in the film too, was respect towards realism. I'm trying to say that. So respect to realism in certain aspects. In the plane hijacking sequences, we get like when there's gunfire or whatnot. Now, one thing I will argue, like, it breaks the reality is that like if gunfire is happening in a shuttle, wouldn't that pierce through? But this is a shuttle that does do atmospheric re-entry, so the hull could be a lot more stronger than what it is and can take it in, because I mean, you are re-entering into Earth's atmosphere. You're not gonna, I would assume, not have harder, like not denser material to utilize to protect it from re-entry. I'm not a rocket scientist, quite literally, and I don't build rockets or spaceships, but to my ideology is that it makes sense with that. So I could defend that scene a little bit. Otherwise, I believe that shuttle should have blown up from within with the pressure and all that jazz. But like the scenes where they were using automatics, as a gun person, when they were using automatics, it's kind of funny because like with the bullets flying down too, the bullets would hit down onto like the carpet. Like when there was a scene like a shell casing or a cartridge casing falls down, singes the carpet, and then rolls off. I was like, wow, that's some really good realism. For those who've never shot a gun before or anything like that, a casing from any cartridge can get, but would be really, really hot after being expelled and used. So I thought that was really, really cool realism that they added in there. The other thing I liked about it too was trigger discipline. They had some really, really good trigger discipline on the characters. Hathaway in particular, after utilizing his, after defending what he needed to do, would have his finger off the trigger for the most part. Not in the trigger well or anything like that. So I thought that was very interesting that they paid respect to that. And you go like, Zaku, why is that even important? And I go, okay, well, it's important to have that in the context of this. When it comes to movies, a lot of times they don't really depict guns or handling guns in a very responsible way. I'm not going to say realistic, but in a more responsible way. And people would put their finger in the trigger well and do stupid things and whatnot. And that's how you get accidents a lot of times. It's one thing in real life when that happens, and sometimes in real life we see it in shows or movies where they do kind of have some level of finger discipline. That means that tells me that they have a good weapons expert slash firearms trainer on set to teach their actors not to be stupid and put their finger in the trigger, or put their finger in the trigger well, and teach them, hey, have your finger off the trigger or put it on the frame, aim low, and not at anybody, okay, when you're not using it. That's very good discipline. That's one thing to learn about that in real life. It's another to show that in animation. I think that's fascinating. I think that's actually interesting in a lot of detail in respect to being a responsible firearm user. They had Hathaway and Hathaway and Kenneth Slot, the level of discipline, right? The level of showing that in the movie in an animated form. They didn't even have to bother to do that. They can just animate them, keep their fingers on the trigger well. But no, they animated them to not have it on the frame. I thought that was awesome. And showing people like, hey, this is what you should probably be doing. I know a lot of people are not going to pick up on that one, but for a gun enthusiast, a firearm enthusiast like myself, or anybody else, they would truly appreciate that in an animated movie. Okay, animated movie. You can't get real life actors to really not put their finger in the trigger well, but they did it in an animated movie, so I thought that was really cool. That made a big difference to me. So there's that level of realism again too, and showing responsible firearm handling and ownership in a sense. Overall, though, I thought that the pacing of the movie, even though there wasn't a whole lot of action, was very well paced. It's divided again with the story and then characters themselves and the character development. Although character development isn't too grandiose, it's still very good character development. I feel, at least. I find it interesting. It was tying along with the whole espionage stuff. I would have to say that this is a very different Gundam movie. It's not anything that I've ever seen in the entire Gundam franchise. While we have moments of espionage and spies and questionable things, this is not the same as anything else that we've seen before. This feels very much like watching a spy movie, a James Bond movie almost, This is something absolutely different and new in the Gundam franchise, and I actually welcome it. It's pretty nice, refreshing even. On the conversation about characters, though, I do want to say, well, I do enjoy our three primary characters that we do follow. Not that I hate her, but our mysterious Gigi, a lot of her mannerisms, a lot of her characteristics remind me of Quest. Now, this is on purpose, though, because as we see with Hathaway 2, his mannerisms and reactions towards Gigi is that because of his thing for Quest still. I would say, though, that she is not as bad as Quest because she doesn't do anything stupid like Quest. But she borderlines with a lot of her mannerisms and attitudes, which also kind of harken back to the whole new type stuff. So, again, while it's a little bit frustrating or irritating, for somebody who's already been watching a lot of the Gundam series and like now keeping a straight line with the timeline itself too, a lot of her characters and mannerisms matches up to a lot of what we see in Cyber New Types and New Types. So it makes sense. It makes sense. And same thing with Hathaway and his mannerisms and behaviors too. I think people who come into this movie would find her very erratic or weird and a played up character. I don't think that's the case for Gigi here. But yeah, I just want to point out, like, she kind of grits on me in a little bit, but it makes sense with her character and how she impacts Hathaway throughout the entire movie. And as I mentioned before too, this is the first part of 3 movies, so the movie kind of also does a lot of setup for the next movie, especially towards the end. The final fight doesn't really feel like a final fight here. It felt like more of a short little sortie, and that's about it. That said, though, even though like the movie ended in that way, not quite of a cliffhanger, but more like a lead up to is the best way I can describe it. it's not really that disappointing. It's not. It's not something that would frustrate me, and I don't think would frustrate too many people. I think just the final fight itself would just be a little bit of its frustration. I do look forward to and wanting to see the next movie. Hopefully, it's going to be released in something akin to how Hathaway is released. Maybe Netflix got the exclusive rights to the next 2 movies too, and they will release those. But I am definitely looking forward to watching the future too. I'm not really mad about how this movie ended. It could have been much worse. It could have ended on a cliffhanger, then that would definitely piss me off and really drove the score down. But no, it ended off nicely. It was more, again, not a cliffhanger. It's a lead up. It's a lead up to the next movie. Very different from a cliffhanger where it cuts you abruptly and leaves you with so many questions or like excited for the next part of the movie, right? No. This movie concludes and then, does a little tiny ending to tie things up of the current movie and lead up towards the future. So, I am looking forward to the next movie. I'm sad that I can't watch them in sequential order here. So, like what I've been doing with my entire Gundam franchise review, I wanted to go through a nice timeline and see how things progress and how our writers and directors are keeping consistent with the whole Gundam franchise. At least in this case with the UC Century, keeping everything pertinent and the same as it is. It's the same. It's a shame I will not get to see those future ones, but I will definitely review them in the future when they come. Hopefully, just like Hathaway, they get released, like kind of like a day one release, and I can actually watch it rather than having to wait years on end. Like the difference between Narrative Gundam and Hathaway, for an example. That said, that's all I want to say about the movie specifically towards like the movie itself. I do want to talk about my next little segment here, which is the suits. Like always, every Gundam series, new Gundam series or movie, brings in a lot of new suits, redesigns, those sort of things. However, there are some special cases, and Gundam Hathaway fits within those special cases. Now, this takes place, I would say about, is it, not quite 10 years? I'm trying to do the math in my head right now. 8 years after Narrative, for an example, right? Or 8 years after Gundam Narrative in 0105. So things could change, but not by a whole lot. And if you look right here, this is all the suits that they offer. I'm going to say that this Odysseus Gundam, I did not see it in the movie, though. So I want to call shenanigans on this Odysseus Gundam. It might be just from the novel itself. But a lot of the suits aren't, like, we got 2 familiar ones, although this is a redesign of a Jigen, or Jigen. Gustav Karl, which was in the Unicorn Gundam series and Narrative, makes a return to this series, although it's a little bit of a different one. We're introduced to a couple of new things, and these few couple of new things are things I do like. Now, I just want to point out the Mezzer, for an example, looks like a nicer redux of a Zaku. It's like the Zaku family line, and I like it for what it looks like. Much of the scenes that we see the Mezzers in are in dark scenes, so it's kind of hard to make out. I kind of like the look of it overall, but it's not a bad looking suit. Not a whole lot to it, though. Just a redesigned version of a bulkier Zaku, right? But the real highlights of the movie, I want to say, is I actually do enjoy the titular gun, not even the titled Gundams, but like the main Gundams of the movie. It looks weird, but it's called the XI, so it's pronounced Z or ZZ Gundam. Gigi? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a pretty neat Gundam, albeit too bulky in my taste, weird. It's got these little arm things. It's kind of hard to make out at times because the other Gundam, they look almost the same. In fact, both these Gundams are incredibly bulky and weird looking at times. Feels strange because considering that as we go down the Gundam timeline, the actual mobile suits get smaller. During Zeta time frame, though, they get a little bit bulkier, they got heavier armor and stuff like that, and then we start slowly moving away from the heavier armor suits, making them lighter, smaller, so they're much more faster and nimble when they fight in like space or in combat in general. Faster, smaller, harder targets to hit, for an example, right? But these two are huge hulking Gundams. While the Gundam Penelope's overall design looks weird, I do like it when it transforms, because when it transforms, it looks like this weird, like, not a Hydra, but like a star dragon flying in the sky. I thought that was really, really cool. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it. I would have pulled up my Netflix to show you guys screenshots of it, but I do not want to deal with any issues with YouTube flagging this and all that jazz. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to just take my word for it. We're gonna go off of that. But these two suits are pretty cool designs. Not super favorites of mine, but I really, really do like them. And same thing with the Mezzer. Mezzer's a pretty nice looking suit. That's pretty much all I wanted to say regarding the suits. Again, Gundam Hathaway does not bring in a whole lot of new suits. In fact, 3 new suits is pretty much it. I'm going to say with confidence, based off of memory, okay? We haven't gotten to that point yet, but we'll get to it eventually. But I think Gundam Hathaway takes the cake for the least amount of action and the least amount of new suits. I think the only other one that would come close to Hathaway would have been, in terms of suits, between a new translation or, if you want to call that too cheeky, I would say next is Gundam Wing, or sorry, Endless Waltz. Same thing with the amount of action too, because Endless Waltz only has maybe 3 or 4 action sequences, and Hathaway only has 2 mecha action sequences. 3 if you want to count the whole airplane hijacking scene. So that's not a whole lot. And this movie, again, 95% of this movie, not including that third non-mech action sequence, is mostly story. So I do want to say it takes the new tier for least amount. A lot of people praise Gundam Wing Endless Waltz for being an excellent movie and stuff like that. We'll see again when we get to my review regarding that. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but from what I can base off of memory, it didn't have a whole lot of action. It was a cool movie, but not a whole lot of action, not a lot going on. Mostly story, which is where it hits. I would say the same thing with Gundam Hathaway, and Gundam Hathaway really hits a lot of nice points here and there. Which brings me to my next segment here. I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I start with Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway? As of right now, and I've only watched this once now, but considering all the factors I have for this movie, I would say no. It's not because this movie is not complete, because, this is the first of 3 movies, so that might have impacted my thought process of hey, you shouldn't watch this because it's not complete. No, that's not the case. Not that I can't give a full opinion about the movie, because the movie itself is a good movie. But I think contextually, within the Gundam franchise itself, right, what you would concept as what Gundam is, what do I expect when watching a Gundam series? I don't think this would be a good movie to jump into. Very much, again, the story is more of an espionage story. It's very different than from various Gundam series. And while the movie does take place far from all prior events, with the closest one being Char's counterattack and... I'm sorry, not Char's counterattack, but Gundam Narrative. That's the closest one. An 8-year gap, right? This movie does reference a lot of times to the previous other movies, so it does make references, or movies and series, so it makes references Char's counterattack, not so much so as Unicorn, but it does reference it with the whole concept about new types that was introduced about that with the whole Laplace box incident. And I feel, again, between the interactions between Hathaway and Gigi, you're not going to get a whole lot of understanding or making a lot of sense of it if you haven't seen Char's counterattack, or at least, the original Mobile Suit Gundam, or not, I wouldn't say the original, I would say Mobile Suit Gundam trilogy movies, Zeta Gundam, or Double Zeta Gundam. I would even throw in Unicorn Gundam too, because the interactions and storylines that revolve around new types is kind of critical, because you would never have an idea of why are these characters behaving this way? Why are they interacting in this manner? It wouldn't make much sense if you came into this brand new and it would just seem very, very awkward or weird. It wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. So, as much as this is an enjoyable, story-based movie, I don't think it's something that really represents Gundam in the best way possible. And for a newcomer to come into it too, they're going to get a misnomer, a misidea about what the Gundam franchise is not quite about, but what the Gundam franchise is like. So I don't think this would be a good starter movie. I would definitely recommend the movie, though. It's a good movie. but not for a starter. Not for a starter. That said, though, since it's on Netflix though, and I don't like talking too much about or like promoting like other things unless I'm being sponsored or whatnot. But like with Netflix though, the nice thing about Netflix as of right now, of July 3rd of 2021 right now, Netflix does have something that you can watch. So the nice thing about it is that they do have the Mobile Suit Gundam trilogy movies, they do have Char's Counterattack, and they do have Unicorn Gundam. So quite literally, if you want to, you can watch those three and then watch Gundam Hathaway, and you would get some semblance and understanding. Because at least with the original movie trilogy, it's going to set you up with the ideology about behind new types. Char's Counterattack will crescendo the whole conflict of new types. And then Unicorn Gundam introduces some new ideologies revolving around new types and actions against or with new types that is presented in Hathaway. So I think that would be a nice little lead-up watch. Unfortunately, Netflix does not have Zeta or Double Zeta Gundam, which I would recommend watching before watching Hathaway. I don't think narrative is imperative to watch before Hathaway. So that kind of gives you an idea, like, hey, this is brand new, Zaku. I really want to watch this. What should I do? I'm like, seriously? Watch all the other Gundam series, sans Iron Blood Orphan on Netflix, to build yourself towards Hathaway. Watch Iron Blooded Orphan either before you start that little run through or afterwards. But they're all movies, so that's the nice thing. They're all really, really contained. It'd probably take you about a day to watch all of it, I would say. Maybe more, maybe 2 days or 3 days, depending on your schedule. But I would definitely say like that's your best option. Alright, and as for the overall, Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway is an interesting and welcoming entry into the Gundam franchise, especially for it being in the mid-UC century timeline. It's a unique espionage-esque story that revolves around very tight-lipped and eggshelly based characters, and while the story has a lot of tension between who's who and who to trust, the mecha fighting action is actually sacrificed for this, making it a much more tamer film compared to previous Gundam series and films. Despite all of that, though, it's still an entertaining watch that gives a lot of room and potential for the next film to build off of. Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway gets a solid 3 out of 5. But yeah, Hathaway wasn't terribly that bad of a movie. Like I said, I enjoyed it for the most part. It was a fun spy movie, basically. And, you know, you throw in a lot of Gundam elements. Most of the Gundam elements are the new type elements, so I guess, yeah, maybe narrative kind of plays a key to that, but not so much so. It's not too crazy with that. But really like a lot of the elements they brought into this movie here. I'm hoping that the sequel does become a little bit more action-y. More involving with our characters, not so much so as like who to trust anymore, because now that veil is gone. The veil of all this mystery and stuff like that, throw that out the window here. So I want to see a little bit more about like more higher interactions rather than like, do I trust you? Do I not? No, I want to see a little bit more. But this was a fun movie, definitely different than compared to any other Gundam series or movie at this point that I've ever seen. That said, if you haven't already, make sure that if you're watching this on Twitch, follow me on my Twitch account here. If you're watching it on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway. It's a brand new movie, so I'm curious what you guys got to say about it too. What did you think about my opinion about the movie? What did you think? Did you think it was sucked? Was it good? Was it too boring? Or was it very clever and interesting and intriguing? You tell me. I want to hear from you guys, so leave a comment down below. And if you want to keep abreast about when I go live and so forth, make sure to follow me on my my Twitter account. On my Twitter account, that's when I make announcements of when I'm going live, what I'm going to be reviewing, and random things here and there as well. Aside from all that, I do want to thank you guys for watching this review, and until the next one, see you next time. Take care.